So thank you all for coming. This is like the worst day we could have planned anything. And we never know how many people we get at these events, anywhere from 20 to 250. You know, and a topic like this, which to me is like the coolest topic, people can look at and go, huh? You know, but for those of us who are interested in our own stories, or how our stories interface with history, which they all do, and my favorite topic, which is history touches us all the time. It touches us in technology, in furniture, in everyday life. And so my name is Carolyn Gould. I'm president of the Chittenden County Historical Society, and we have an amazing group of speakers who are going to go through each sort of their area, whether it's physical or virtual, to give some insight into what's available and maybe how to use it, or maybe some directions. You will split up then, and you can ask them any kind of question, nothing specific, because we don't have the ability to do that here. But I just want to take the time just to say that the Chittenden County Historical Society is a content-driven society. We don't have a museum. All we have are publications, words, things of that sort. And we are celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. And we're going to have a great big anniversary party, August 16th to 17th, together with the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. And we're going to have two speakers. The speaker we're hosting on Saturday is Wes Testo, who is the new director of the Pringle Herbarium, where Fanny Allen specimen collection is housed. And he's going to be talking about women botanists in the 18th century, of which there were a lot. And also on Fanny. And since it's Fanny's weekend, they'll be harvesting flax. They have a Fanny reenactor and all of the various things that they do. For our celebration, we have a whole host of people who are going to put on various activities. Everything from the Vermont Historical Society, with Clara's Games, to Vermont Records and Archives, and who have designed wonderful ways of looking at cursive writing. How do you read this stuff? And matching historical documents with signatures, kind of fun. John has put on a roulette wheel called Time Machine?
The Time Machine.
Time Machine. And so you can spin and answer questions and get a little prize, you know. We've got the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association doing women in crafts. We've got, I don't know, the list is growing, and it's going to be so much fun. But it'll be lasting from 10 to 2. The talks each day are on 2 o'clock. And on Saturday, we're going to have birthday cake and champagne. So I hope you guys can come and get your grandkids or your children or all of those people and bring the child in you along, right? Because it's going to be fun. And other than that, I'm so pleased to have this great group of people here. And I wish we had more people at the end of this. If you can't stay and you want to go down to the waterfront, I encourage it, but I'm not political. And be sure to ask questions. You know, this is an informal enough group that we don't have to stand on ceremony. And this is being, thank you, recorded by CCTV's Town Meeting, as are all of our talks. So you can go there and find our channel and get any of the talks you may have missed. Some of them are, all of them are really good. Anyway, so I'm going to introduce our Chair of Programming, Miss Elizabeth Allen.
Hello?
Not on.
Not yet.
Okay, that does not amplify. It's only for me.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited about today's lineup.
because we at CCHS have the experts here. We have a panel on how to use local and online historical resources, sponsored by us, Chittenden County Historical Society. We've got presentations where each expert in their field tells more about their area of expertise. And then, as Carolyn mentioned, we will have small breakout groups where you have the chance to ask questions of particular experts whose material you're interested in. And I listed the experts alphabetically by surname because that's how it seemed to work. We have David Boucher, who's the collections manager and VP of the Shelburne Historical Society. We have Prudence Doherty, who's a public services librarian at UVM Silver Special Collections. We have Lynn Johnson, who's the president of the French-Canadian Genealogical Society.
Raise your hand, Lynn.
We have Kara Koenig, State Archivist and Outreach Specialist for the Vermont State Archives and Records Administration. And we have John Thomas, who's the Chair of Marketing for CCHS. So each person will, introduce themselves and go a little bit more in depth into their area of focus. So thank you so much.
So we each have 10 minutes, is that correct?
Yes.
More or less.
More or less? Okay.
All right.
Can we try plugging that in?
Yes, let's.
Let's see if this is going to work or not work.
Dave, maybe you should stand up.
Yep. Right. There. Source, do you mind if I help button? Keep your fingers crossed. Hey, look at that. All right, life's good. So, again, my name is David Boucher. I am a newly minted expert. I retired from Gardener's Supply after 26 years and thinking, what am I going to do? So once I did all my house projects, I was in the town offices and found the town report, and at the back they said, oh, the Historical Society is looking for somebody to help with their collections. So I went, okay. So I went in and I figured they were already up and running. And then Dorothea, who had been running the society for quite a few years, took me into the vault, and it looked like a hoarder's house. It was just piles. So I had experience in installing point-of-sale systems, and I am not a techie, but I understand software and what it can do and what a business wants. So I started the search on some software to catalog what they had. And part of what was important was the society, we're the third iteration of the society. So back in the 60s, folks were gathered together and started to collect stuff, but there was no sort of central repository. And eventually they passed away. So they, again, then another group about 10 years after them decided, let's try this again. So they did. But then Shelburne had a 250th anniversary, but anyway, big town event, lots of information gathered, and then Dorothea decided, you know what, we should try and incorporate this time. So they did, and we had our 10th anniversary last year. But out of all that time, of course, is like 3 years of COVID that nothing was happening. So I joined just after COVID started. So I went online and I found this software, which is called Catalogit. A lot of folks had been telling me, you should use something called Past Perfect. And not to get into a lot of depth about software, Past Perfect would run the Shelburne Museum. And we didn't need that. I mean, we have about 8 people on our board, but there's only 3 of us that are really working to keep the society going. So we found this software, and it was really great because there's really 2 levels of this. It's what you see here when you log in, and then the other level is here, and on the left side are folders. So when you go into any of these, called entries, and you see on the top right it says Farms, Shelburne Farms, Historic Buildings, Photographs. Anytime I put something in, I can assign it into a folder. So when the users come along and they see this, oh, I'm just going to click on anything, let's see, Shelburne Inn, and it goes off, and each one of those items is in that folder, Shelburne Inn. What this allows me to do is, you see those folders, some of them have a little dot in it, that's a globe. That allows me to turn on that folder so that there is a free part of this software that is integrated with a website that allows us to put that out to the public online. So that's pretty much the software that we found, and what makes life so much easier for us, because when you go and enter something, if I just did this, let's do no media, and it always asks me, is this art or a basket or whatever? So I'll just click on something, and what that's doing is it's just going out there and collecting all the different data points that you want to talk about for any of these. The nice part about this software also is like an inventory management system. So where it says location, what I've done is you can see where it says binder, and let me reduce that. These are all the different locations and shelves and everything where stuff is. So if people ask me for something, I can go right straight to it and find it. So I'm going through this really quickly. There's a lot more detail, but that's basically what I've been working on. We got a grant for $5,000 to be able to archive this stuff. So the last year, that's what I've been doing, is setting all of this stuff up. This is sort of the back room. You can see on the bottom left, there's 375 entries so far. Within some of these entries, if I did this, and collections, collections, and whoops, back up. I'm looking for, within an entry, here's a good one right here. I didn't want to put in or create an entry for every single item that we had. So I created something called a collection, and this is Henry Morse, the gentleman that lived in Shelburne, and listed on the left is everything that we have within that collection. So now users at least know we have some of that stuff. So not to use up too much more time, one thing that I discovered which was really great about this software is, when they told us, I thought we were going to be able to just have a site in order to put this up for the public, and they would just log into it. It turns out that you have to actually go through your own website, and Shelburne didn't have a website, and I've never dealt with websites before, so I had to learn how to create a website. So we found one very, very simple, and then if you scroll down, here's our collections, and this is what the public will see. This is what you will see if you go through our website. And it's the same idea where if I clicked on that, there's all the things about Harbor Hideaway. These are all postcards. And again, if you click on one specific one, you'll see some information on the right-hand side about each item. So what's really interesting about this is at the top, there are classifications. See on the top right? If I touch on that, that brings us into the universe of everybody that is using Catalogit. So if you imagine Catalogit is this giant room, Shelburne is using a portion of this. What I just accessed was the whole room. So if you look at Object Artifact in the top center, there's 340,000 items that you can look at. So if you have nothing to do and want a real time suck and go wandering through your universe, but what's fun about this is that it puts us as a small society into a much larger universe of things. So if you are, for example, interested in, I don't know, let's do this right here, and they're talking about this leaflet. If you're interested in that kind of object, there's Wright Museum of World War II. Lots of times societies will have other things that are similar. So that takes you right to their own site. And I'm assuming sometimes, yeah, there it is on the top, it'll say visit our website. So if I go up back here, what you'll see is now, if I hit collections, these are all the societies that are using Catalogit. So there's an awful lot. Now, I know a lot of this isn't local, but this is, what I'm going to do here is put in VERMONT, and you will see, in a second, searching. So these are the folks that are using Catalogit in the state at this point. Vermont Historical Society had been using it, and I actually chatted with the collections manager there, and she helped me a lot with how to use this a lot quicker. Shelburne, Chelsea, and I know that I've been having discussions with a number of other societies about this software because they're trying to get off past perfect or just actually start up and catalog their collection. So this is super simple. You just need to know a little bit about computers and file management. And the only thing that I will tell you is that for each item that I have, you see on the top right, it says 2024.2. I have a digital folder where that image is residing. And if I collect any other information about that image or that particular topic, I put it in that folder. So that number at the top right is not only indexing that, but it's also indexing my entire folder. So there is a lot more than just what you see on the public site. There's everything in our digital collection that we have. So, so there we go. That is what we've been up to, and hopefully the future of digital collection for small societies. There we go. And I'm so glad that worked.
I know. How many years?
So I would just like to stress that a lot of these digital collections now are beginning to proliferate. And if you go online and you enter the appropriate words, or you go to some of these people, different software organizations or platforms like catalogit,
Yeah.
it can open doors to information that you're looking for. That, I mean, I didn't know about the Wright World War II Museum, but there it was, and there's this wonderful resource of information. And with really not a time suck, but with a little poking around, you can open huge doors to things you never knew were there. So it's really kind of exciting, especially when you're small now and you can open up to the world. It's great.
This is so word.
So, and, the next presenter is Prudence Doherty, who will be talking about doing research at Silver Special Collections at UVM.
And I will tell Elizabeth when to go to the next slide. And also, I just want to warn you that I'm the kind of person who needs to write a script. So if I'm looking down, it's to make sure that I don't talk too much. So I'm Prudence Doherty. I'm the Public Services Librarian in Silver Special Collections, where I've been working since 2001. Before that, I worked for UVM's Consulting Archaeology program doing historical research for their Vermont projects. In this introduction, I'm going to share basic information about doing research in special collections, which is a department of the University of Vermont Libraries. Next. The Chittenden County Historical Society's origin story includes its first organizational meeting in special collections, which was then located on the lower level of what is now known as the Howe Library. In 2018, we moved to the Billings Library at 48 University Place. You can reach us by entering the grand front arch and finding your way through a maze down to the second level, or you can come around to the back and find a much more direct route to get to the door of special collections. Next. I had to include this photograph of our reading room with Vermont historian and Chittenden County Historical Society member Jerry Fox working on the first day that we opened in Billings. We had been closed for a period of time, frustrating Jerry, and he was here bright and early to get back to print resources. The reading room is where you will find our collections and our librarians. We're open Monday through Friday, with hours that vary a little bit depending on the time of year. During fall and spring semesters, we add an hour to the end of each day. Next. The UVM Library's website includes a landing page for special collections that's designed to give you access to all sorts of essential information about special collections. Hours, directions, contact information, ways to search for resources. Down below the part I clipped, there's also a link to our blog and information about exhibits that we host in 2 different locations in Billings. Next. Everybody is welcome to use our collections, students, faculty, staff, researchers, and the general public. That includes K through 12, although maybe we start with 4, 5 through 12. You know, littler kids, we don't have much stuff for them. But public school students, private school students are welcome to use our collections. It can be very helpful if you consult with our librarians before you visit. We have so much stuff that sometimes we can help narrow your search even before you come. You don't need to make an appointment, but some collections are stored off-site, photo on the right, and they need to be transferred to the reading room. So checking with us ahead of time is a good idea, so that we have time to bring something over. Every now and then we have somebody who comes and says, but when you were in the other building, I didn't need to make a request. But the new location doesn't have as much storage room. So if you're using a manuscript collection or architectural collection, which is stored off-site, you're going to need to talk to us in advance. It's important to know that all the materials must be used in the library. The material does not circulate. Sometimes there are second copies in the Howe Library that do circulate, so if you have borrowing privileges from the UVM libraries, you might be able to find a second copy. But for most stuff, you have to use it on site. And I had to put in a bullet about parking being challenging. It's just a fact of visiting us. There's no easy way around it unless you can park and walk. But I would advise checking UVM's visitor parking information to see where parking, public parking is and how the app works that you have to use to pay. If you come for a special event that's in the evening, you wouldn't have to have a parking challenge and you can park anywhere. But during the hours that we're open, I'm sorry that it's a problem. We have a little parking lot nearby that has 2 accessible spaces and 2 30-minute meters. So if you're only coming really quickly or you have an accessible parking permit, that can be a plus. Next. So what do we have? Our largest collection is the Vermont Research Collection. We also have material about UVM and a rare books collection. The Vermont Research Collection, which you might know as the Wilbur Collection of Vermontiana, if you've been using special collections for a long time, is the largest and most heavily used. We gave it a more modern name because it was really hard to stand up in front of undergraduates and talk about the Wilbur Collection of Vermontiana. Nothing was happening. So Vermont Research Collection was much more straightforward. But we can't abandon that historical name totally. So this collection includes material on all subjects and all time periods in a variety of formats. We collect primary and secondary sources and scholarly and public and popular works. I have a few examples in this slide. There's a ticket to a dance recital in Burlington on the left, a photo of Shelburne shipyards in the 1940s, and a letter written by U.S. Senator Warren Austin home to his mother. And one of the things that's really interesting about Warren Austin's letters to Mom is that they talk politics and what's happening in Washington. They're not really just talking about, we're fine, how are you? There's a real substance in these. Next. Let's see. Our second most heavily used collection is material about UVM, also known as the University Archives. There is a range of information that we collect. We're trying to document the people, places, and activities at UVM and on UVM properties. We collect some administrative material, although there's not a really strong records management program, so it's a little bit variable what we might have. But our goal is to be able to talk about the history of administrative and academic units, student groups. We have UVM theses and dissertations. I think some of you in this room have your thesis represented in that collection. We collect papers of faculty, administrators, and alums. We have lots of publications, photographs, ephemera, audiovisual material. Generally, all this material is open for use. Well, there's a little bit of material that's limited by institutional or legal restrictions. I'm not allowed to look at the general counsel's papers. None of us are, unless we were employed by that office. I included a couple images that just speak to documenting change on the campus. So that's the original entrance to the Bailey, what was then the Bailey Library, back in the time period when CCHS was founded 60 years ago. Picture of Converse Hall on the right, showing how undeveloped that part of campus was. Now Converse Hall is just hedged in by a lot of different buildings. Next slide. Oh, I'm just going to back up for a second. We answer all kinds of questions about Vermont topics. And I thought it might be fun to mention a couple of things that we've done with the University Archives lately. We provided campus facilities with photos of the original exterior doors of the Royal Tyler Theater. Apparently, the doors from previous renovation didn't meet code, so they decided to investigate the historic doors, and I understand they were just installed, the new ones, so it'll be interesting to go see how they were able to use historic data to create the doors. Another thing that we did recently is an email question came in about the UVM's campus ministry coffee house that operated in the late 60s and early 70s. That was something we'd never heard about. We were happy to dig into it and try to find information. Next. Our rare book collection is large and kind of eclectic. It may not be something that you would use for Vermont research. It includes everything from medieval manuscripts to modern artist books, books that are valuable, printed before 1800, and collections that serve teaching or research needs. And actually, I thought herbals was kind of interesting to mention because it's related to Fanny Penniman and the Pringle Herbarium, and they're collecting. So we have herbals that date back to the 1500s right up through more recent times. So that could be something that could be related to a Vermont investigation. The image on the right is another example of something in the rare book collection that has a Vermont connection. I'm sorry for the fuzziness of the image, but it's a book about the efforts of Greece to obtain independence in 1827 and 1828 by a Vermonter who went to fight there and also raised funds to support the people seeking independence. Next. So we do have digital collections as well. I couldn't find a good slide that showed you the range of collections that are there. They're largely Vermont collections. And they include things like letters, so Warren Austin's letters are up there, maps, there's maps of Burlington, there's some fire insurance maps, diaries, photographs, newspapers, music, and more. We continue to add new content. Our biggest next goal that would be of interest to you all is to add our Burlington photos as a collection online. Right now, you still can look at fuzzy old copy index images, and then we can bring you a folder. It's way too old-fashioned. So it's our next goal. Next, I tried to make a list of resources that we have available. There's so many different things that you might think about using. Everything from town and county histories to the library subscription to Ancestry Library Edition. In print, we have topical histories, directories, periodicals, newsletters, maps and atlases, town and city annual reports. We collect memoirs and biographies. We have lots of ephemera and broadsides and posters. We have newspapers that are not easily available through newspapers.com. So for example, the Shelburne News is one we have that's not represented in some other source you might use. That's still in print, in the print version. Images, postcards, photographs, stereo views, unpublished material, personal papers, organizational records, and David found Shelburne Historical Society photos from the bicentennial, am I
Yeah,
right?
when they had the bicentennial, part of their project was somebody ran around and said, if you got any old pictures, I found 300 images that I had never seen before. So I was able to get copies of that, and pretty amazing.
Organizational records, again, just drawing on Shelburne for a minute, we have the papers of the Shelburne Spinners, which is a really interesting organization that kind of was affiliated with Shelburne Farms for a while. And we even have their dye recipes and samples of their dyeing of wool. Account books, scrapbooks, oral histories, et cetera. We have just so many different kinds of materials for you to look at. I forgot architectural plans and land surveys on this list, which are two of the most frequently used. Okay, next. Giving you a full introduction on how to find material in special collections would probably take an hour and a half. But here's just a quick way to start your research. On the top box is the search box for the UVM Library catalog. So almost all of our print material, as well as maps, periodicals, you can find by searching that box. Down below is the top of our page for finding aids, and those are the inventories of unpublished collections, things like organizational records, papers, Shelburne Historical Society photos. Not all of our collections are represented there, but it's a good place to start. And then finally, I think the most important resource for help finding things is to talk to a librarian. We can show you how to navigate those other two tools, but we can also make connections about your topic and materials that you might not have thought of. You can visit us in person, you can email us. Our department email is the first email, but I'm happy to take email questions as well, and you can call us. Although, as I was talking with Kara, I was going to say Visara, but Kara, email can be better because it lets us track, and it also gives us the spelling of what you're looking for, so never hesitate to email. Next. That's it. So I was just going to end by saying that I can provide more information about our collections and how to find material and make particular suggestions for your research project during the next portion of this event. We could talk about turnpikes, right, Richard? We have an ongoing conversation that's not finished about how goods were transported from Troy, New York to the Champlain Valley.
Before the canal.
Before the canal. And we think the answer is turnpikes. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lynn Johnson, and I'm going to talk about the Vermont Genealogy Library and the Vermont French-Canadian Genealogical Society. Next. So we were founded in 1996 as the Vermont French-Canadian Genealogical Society. And while that continues to be one of our specialties, it's not our only area of interest. In 2011, we decided to expand our focus to include other nationalities, including the Irish, English, Scottish, the groups that settled in Vermont and so on. And our array of classes has also expanded to include things like genetic genealogy, organizing your research methodology, finding Polish ancestors, and much more. Our goals. We want to assist individuals in their research by really practicing and modeling good practices, how to save documentation, how to cite your sources as you go, pulling as much information from the source as you can get, and assessing everything to make sure it fits. Oftentimes when people come in, they're looking at sites like Ancestry and they're ready to just copy it. And it's like, you can use that as a reference, but you need to verify that the person who put it up there did it right. So this is something that we're constantly teaching people. And we also want to provide the best assortment of tools for people's genealogy research as we can, and to share our interest and our fun in genealogy. Next. So Vermont is one of our focuses, and I goofed on this and discovered just at the last minute, I forgot to put a picture. We're constantly expanding our reference books and resource books for Vermont. Some of you might be familiar with Scott Andrew Bartley. He works for the New England Historic Genealogical Society. He's published books on early Vermont history, and he is now doing acquisitions for us to help us expand and build on our collection of books. Repertoires, the word is French, but they don't refer just to French books. Repertoires summarize key facts. In civil records, they would be birth, marriage, or death records. In Catholic colonies like France, Spain, New France, they would catalog baptism, marriage, and burial records. Sometimes this information needs to be translated, but what it does is it gives you a short version of the actual record, and so it can help you track down people. And we have published 65 volumes of Vermont Catholic parish records, and we started with the oldest Catholic parishes in the state. The reason for Catholic is, of course, our link to French Canadian, but also the Catholic records tended to have more information in them than Protestant records. And in Vermont, sometimes those Catholic church records will come before the civil records. And so that can be helpful to people. New York and New England are another area. There's a lot of cross-migration and back and forth between Vermont and New York, people going back and forth. So New York records tend to be more of a black hole. They didn't require record collections as early as Vermont and the other New England states did. So we try to get as much as we can for New York State and obviously New England for migration reasons and many other reasons. So these are just a few examples of some of the books that we have. Series like The Great Migration, the Mayflower Silver books, we're in the process of collecting those, and many more. AmericanAncestors.org is the website run by the New England Historic Genealogical Society out of Boston. It's the oldest in the country. Their specialty is early New England records and along the Atlantic seaboard. And so we have this as a subscription site on our computers. We pay for it and you can come and use it at the library. The United States, we have books on other states and so on, but obviously, as many other places, space is an issue. So more of our resources for that are going to be on the computers. This year, we've subscribed to Fold 3 for military records because of the 250th anniversary. We also pay for a Civil War database. And the World. My Heritage Library edition is very, very helpful to us. And I'll ask for the next one. And this company is based in Israel, and they specialize in records for Europe. Many, many millions of records, including for the United States. I've explored a little bit more recently and found U.S. Census records and things like that. One of the things we do is, if you're a member, you can use this from home. And so that's part of our subscription database, as well as Ancestry.com, which provides many records. One of the cool, if you could go back to a sec. One of the cool things that Ancestry does is, if you're at our library using our computers and you find a record, you can save it to a USB, or you can also email it home to yourself, which is really nice. If you're there and you find 5 records, you go home, you have one email, you just open it up and there they are. It's very nice. We always recommend FamilySearch.org, which is also free, and you can use it at home anytime. One of the things that's different is sometimes you'll find a record on FamilySearch that says it's locked, and that you either need to go to an affiliated library or a family history center in order to see it. Well, we are an affiliated library. And so if you come, even if you're using your own laptop, it will recognize that you're in our library and you can open those records up. The nearest Family History Center would be at the Mormon Temple across from the Inn at Essex. And so if you find some that say you need to go to a family history center, you would want to make arrangements to go there. Okay, thanks. French Canada, as I said, this was, excuse me, one of our specialties. We have many books on the topic, but we also subscribe to 2 websites. These 2 websites, genealogyquebec.com and the next one, PRDH, have been around for a long time. For example, PRDH started at the University of Montreal in the 1960s. And what they started doing was looking at the original documents and trying to pull together the families. One of the nice things, they're based in Quebec, so they're familiar with the language, they're familiar with the name changes that might have occurred, and so you get less of the weird transcriptions that you might get on Ancestry and so on. Education is a big piece of what we do. We offer a series of classes in the spring and in the fall. Usually each session of classes is about 10 or 12 different classes. We have been doing them because of COVID. We learned how to do them on Zoom, at first just on Zoom, and then we were trying hybrid. Now I think we're going to still record them, but do them a little bit differently. Trying to do them simultaneously as hybrid has been hard. But a lot of different classes, they're $10 each, they're open to the public, and a wide range of topics. We have an annual fall conference. You're all welcome to come. We advertise it, and the last 5 or 6 years we've been having it at St. John Vianney Parish Hall over in South Burlington here. And it's all day, and a couple of the people who are here today have been arranging our speakers for this fall, and so we're going to have a really good conference on September 27th this year. We're trying to build more things for members. We have special interest groups that are just for members. The first one is the Genetic Genealogy Group that meets the first Wednesday of the month. And you can see they get into a lot of topics. The group welcomes beginners to people who are much more advanced than that. And both groups, all the groups encourage people to share what their own knowledge and things that they have found. We also have a French-Canadian special interest group that meets via Zoom on the third Wednesday of the month. And again, this is a presentation by one of the people in the group. This lady happens to be from Quebec, and she was researching where her Huguenot ancestors came from, and so she shared that with the rest of the group. A newer small group that just started this past year that some people have been involved in has been exploring their French-Canadian ancestors who assisted the rebels in the American Revolution. We also have some books on that, and you can actually get into the DAR through your French-Canadian ancestry if you can prove that they were helping the rebels. The best part of having the library, the physical library, and actually this is our old library, but we always learn from others, and we have a good time working together, and people are always willing to help you. And next. We're now located in Essex, not far from IBM, or what was IBM, I still can call it that. We're in the building that in Pinewood Plaza that used to be, yeah, now I'm going to forget, the Planet Fitness gym. And so we're in the corner there, and we have a nice space that's air-conditioned, unlike the old one, and a lot less dust, and we're open on Tuesdays and on Saturdays. Our website has our hours and many other things that you can explore. And so we'd love to have you join us.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Kara Koenig. I'm with the Vermont State Archives and Records Administration. I am the State Archives Outreach Specialist. I also work in the reference room, so kind of doing both things. And that's our building there. So we're located in Middlesex off exit 9. So it's not too far, but far enough for a lot of people, but we're in dead center. Next. Just a little about me. I grew up mostly in Bellows Falls in Springfield, Vermont. Left for a very long time, came back. I have a master's in museum studies from GW. I've been a state employee since 2001, but I've been with Visara since 2023. Favorite research topic is Vermont history through the state statutes. So anytime people are looking for records, I often reference the state statutes to find out where the possibility of those records can be, because it's all dependent on what was required. Next. Who are we? So the Vermont State Archives, we preserve, promote, protect, and provide accurate, authentic, and reliable records and information. That's just part of our purpose statement. So we're fairly new as far as an archives goes. We were only established in 2008, but that's when they merged from public records and the state archives into one when we became State Archives and Records Administration. So we're fairly new, but we've got a massive building. You can see the pictures there, the stacks. That's actually the record center, but then also our map and large image storage area. Next. So public records and exemptions. A public record is any record and information regardless of its form. So it can be paper, it can be digital, it can be a Post-it note. It's all public records. My email is all a public record. My chats, my work chats are all a public record because I'm a state employee. So it's anything that's acquired or produced in the course of a public agency business. There are exemptions. There's always exemptions. So that's the state statute that houses most of the state exemptions, but there are additional exemptions within state statute. Next. So our repositories. We have physical records in secure climate-controlled vaults. We have approximately 20,000 containers of paper records and about 22,000 rolls of microfilm. We have a digital repository called VT Retain that's online and accessible. That repository is mostly for digital-born records. So anything that's more modern you will likely find on VT Retain. Occasionally, we will put re-imaged records on there, most specifically legislative audio, especially if you're talking about the cassette tapes or the reel-to-reel tapes. If we manage to digitize that, we will put that on there for preservation purposes. And VT Retain is a preservation software, so if a Word document goes on there, that particular software will keep it updated so that we don't lose it. And then records can be requested online, by phone, or visiting us. So you can send us an email and say, I'm looking for my ancestor's birth certificate. I can then go look for it, and if I find it, I can email you a copy. But you're also welcome to come in, and we can help you out and look for other records. The phone, we welcome that. It just is easier, again, via email, because especially if you're talking names, or dates, it's helpful to have it all in one location. Next. So our records cover all three branches of state government. We've got judicial records, executive branch, and legislative branch, as well as municipal records. Judicial records, we don't have, especially when you're talking the really old ones, we don't necessarily have all of them. I know UVM, but there's other entities that have these records as well. So when someone is looking for them, what we try and do is, if we don't have them, we try and let our researchers know the repository that may hold them and get them in contact. Agency records, again, it depends on which agencies manage to give us records. The big ones that people research are the manuscript Vermont state papers. So these are Vermont's early government records, to include the Surveyor General papers. So the map that the researcher is looking at is actually one of the original Surveyor General maps that we pulled out. Legislative records, we could talk audio, reel-to-reel, which is not great. But we have the cassettes and CDs up until, if you're looking for a current YouTube video from the legislative committees that are going on, if it's not on YouTube anymore, it is likely on VT Retain, because we ingest all those YouTube videos. Municipal records, we have the town reports. Towns are required to send us their annual reports. We do have some lotting plans, some town records. The towns are the custodians of their lotting plans, so anything that we have is usually a reference copy only. So you're welcome to come in and look at them and copy them, but we can't certify or do anything like that. The vital records we also have, so we have them on microfilm. Again, some of the really old ones are with the towns, but you know, vital records are tricky, and so we often have to let people know that in the 1700s, they might not exist. So we just help give them the knowledge of where records potentially may be if we don't have them. Next. So how to access this. Our reference room is open 9 to 4, Monday through Friday, except state holidays. The last containers are pulled at 3:30 p.m. It takes approximately 15 to 20 minutes to pull a container if you're in our reference room. However, if you let us know you're coming and what you would like to see, we can pull it and have it ready for you when you arrive. So you don't need to make an appointment, but it helps just to pull the boxes. But you're more than welcome to have just walk in. You can do a copy request, so you can send us an email and tell us what you're looking for. Those usually have to be pretty specific because we're not allowed to do in-depth research. If you tell us you're looking for a court case, okay, I can go look for that court case, but I need to know what that court case is. So we have a form, but email sometimes is easier too, so you're welcome to do either. And then our digital repository is accessible through that link. That is online. If you wanted to download, you would just send us an email, tell us what you want to download, and then we could send what you needed to. Next slide. And this is just our contact information. We are in Middlesex off exit 9, and that's our reference room phone number is 802-828-2308. You can contact, the SOS Archives is our reference room email, so that's going to be all of us that work on reference. And then my personal one, so if you wanted to reach out personally, you're welcome to do so. And then our website, there are some resources on our website. It can be a little difficult, but if you ever had any questions, just reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. And then VT Retain. And I think next, yep, that's it.
I'm going to stand up if hopefully nobody minds.
Oh.
I like to interact with the screen. So I'm going to hold a microphone and then point at the screen. This one.
Yes,
Take it out
but you
the-
can sit here if you want.
I want to be near the screen so I can point at things. So, my name is John Thomas. I don't work for newspapers.com. I'm not really an expert either, but I use it every day. I'm a graduate of UVM. Really much of my history enthusiasm prior to Vermont's from my dad. Since in Vermont, it's from UVM. Lillian Carlisle, Sam Bassett. I was involved with this organization in the 90s. I've spent many years in special collections, years going page by page through the Free Press, projects where I looked at every page of every newspaper that was in special collections or on microfiche every day through the entire 19th century. So my enthusiasm for this database is based on prior long research projects that had me going to places and physically looking at things. And so this is a profound tool. And it's really made me think around things anthropologically, because we live in a time where we as a species communicate in a way that we never have before. Mass communication, access to information easily from my couch, where I've found information that have changed some, cherished stories in an hour sitting at home with this database. So I wanted to talk about it also because it's easy. And I'd like to do research that I like time, you have to have patience, intellectual curiosity, but I like things to be quickly accessible. I don't like to park. I don't like to go drive. I've gone all over New England going to archives, and I love it. I really do love it, but I really love being at home and thinking, oh my, I just heard something on TV. I would like to look this up right now. And I can do it. And sometimes, 15 minutes later, I understand something I didn't know before. I understand we might be having a major national debate about something that we had in 1801, often for the same reasons. So it's profound. It's incredibly powerful. And I use it for different things. My wife is really sick of hearing all the things that I find in it, because I'm finding things pretty much every day that are new to me and that expand my understanding of our country, us as New England, our region, Vermont, the regionalism within Vermont, debates between families. It's great. So over 1 billion pages of fun. My original thing was, careful, you might get addicted, but that was maybe too edgy. So next slide. So this is just a few factoids about newspapers.com. And really the main thing I wanted to point out is over 1 billion pages. I believe the time period, it's like it covers newspapers from the late 17th century, I think, to
18th probably.
18th century. Well, there's 1690s. There's late 1600s plus. This is covering the United States. I think it's English-speaking world. So you have the UK you can go into. You can differentiate to Ireland, Scotland, England. I'll show you as we get into it. So it's a massive database, and I actually use it very simply. I want to emphasize that. I'm not a professional. I am intellectually curious. And through this, I found all sorts of avenues where I think this is a PhD project that no one has found. No one's written on it. It's buried. And there it is. And I'm going to move on to the next thing because I'm chasing the next thing. Next page. Okay, so when you come on, I pay a subscription for mine. I think you can get this at most public libraries. Probably many of you in here have used it. Any librarians here, if you can give us more information about how accessible, I don't know. I know this is at Fletcher Free Library. I pay around $20 a month, I think, for my subscription, and it's very addictive. So this is where you come onto a search page. Pretty straightforward. You can choose your location. You can put in your date, your time range, and your keyword. So what's important to this is how you think and when you do your research. That's crucial. because this is a powerful tool and you can keep manipulating the information and how you're going to dive in to try to find something that's useful for what you're looking for. So you can put in Vermont, you can put in Chittenden County, Vermont. I just put in Vermont. Actually, when you start, you click region. So you can click United States, but you can choose the United Kingdom. You have a drop down of different places you can choose to search within. And then once you set United States, you can choose Vermont. You could choose New England. You could set up, how much of the region you want to specify. So Vermont's chosen. Date range, you can choose a specific day. They may or may not have a newspaper in the database for it. You can choose a range of years, and keyword you can work around different ways. So, next page. Okay, so here's the example. I put in Vermont. You'll see that drop down. You click on that, it puts that in. This down here is going to save some of my last couple of searches. So I was looking for the word invincible because I know it's related to a particular movement that happened here at UVM in the mid-19th century. But what's a lot of fun, if you like this sort of thing, is you can find invincibles related to the thing that you are looking for. This was a particular student movement. But then you find all the ways that people talk about invincible. You find it showing up in conversations in Essex. We couldn't stand the Invincibles parade. It spoke differently in Burlington. If you go through the whole state, you'll find St. Albans has a lot of negative stuff to say about it. All those things are interesting to learn about how the state talks about things and how different the state is talking about something. Finding that one city in the state doesn't really like the other city in the state, and it's a tiny state. So it's great for revealing that sort of information. Next page. So I put in the date range. Now by then, all right, so I hadn't put in a keyword. This is just a static page I did screenshot. Put in Vermont. This is showing some places where it's also picking up newspaper hits in that time period. So it's highlighting the states. It's showing in blue. That's the state I've chosen, but it's also showing you other areas where you can find information. So that's like deep sea fishing. So just for example, let's say, we'll go to the next page, I guess. I put in my keyword invincible. This will tell other information, and most of this I don't use. This is telling additional information to help you hone in on what you want. I go into this truly like fishing. I know what kind of I'm going to find in the top hits because I have it set for best match, and it will bring up the top hits. But as soon as you get past sort of the information maybe that you're expecting to find, you begin to find a lot of other information that you didn't know existed. And when I did, let's say when I did research using microfilm at UVM, I recall the Free Press had a few years or maybe a couple of decades with an index, but it was pretty limited. Most of it was unindexed. So if you're looking for something and there's no index, you're just looking. You have to read every day of the paper. So I did that for years. And this, like, you put in something, and it's not that it just pulls up the one article that you've seen before. It'll say, here's 370 of them. And it's an overwhelming amount of information, especially if you put in lots and lots of time going slowly through microfilm, whatever it is that you're researching. When you have a tool that suddenly says, here's this thing, and there's 3,000 things you can go search, 374,000, I've had that return. It's incredible because there's a lot of information at your fingertips. So it'll tell you the region. This already pulled up some pages from the Free Press. Let's see what my next page is. All right, so here, this is to show that you can go in and start to identify newspapers that you want. It'll tell you, so I did a keyword search on Invincible, and this, clicking on the drop down, here's part of the newspapers. It goes farther. 56 articles in the Free Press for that word, 50 in the Vermont Watchman for that word, so on and so forth. And then you can click on those and you can just get the Free Press articles. You can look at all of them. You can go in and choose, this has a drop down, you can choose county. So right now I'm doing some research just on Chittenden County. So I just set county. I'm interested in knowing what newspapers in Chittenden County had to say about something that aren't the Free Press. I'm trying to find information away from Burlington. So, you know, it takes a little bit of manipulation and seeing what returns, but I find things, and I'm never disappointed. Let's see if I have another page out there. Is that the last one? Oh, so that's okay. Best match, so this is another way you can sort your information that's going to return. Best match, you can go, you know, the newest, the oldest, the most recently added, because this database gets updated. I'll get an email saying, hey, you know, we've added a couple more newspapers to the database. 546 matches in this time period for that word. All right, what's the next page on here? More filters. This is a way you can hone in. You can choose, you know, what's obvious here. You're looking for particular days. You can hone in on the months because that's a pretty broad time period. This is a calendar. You can click on the calendar and it'll drop 1850, and you can click, it'll show you in blue what days of newspapers they have scanned, because it's not always a complete collection. It'll show you which days are available. You can pick a day, and then it'll say set a scan or set a scope. Click set a scope, and it'll do the end of the month. So then you're just looking for that word in that 1 month in that year, and you know, if you're patient, you do that month by month. You can expand it. A lot of this has to do with patience. See if I have another page. This is cool. This is another way to show you the breakdown of where the information falls, because I chose a 5-year time period. So it's looking through everything in the database for these 5 years. It shows you where the rise in the newspapers are, where the most hits are. That's useful if you want to go in and read. This also gives you useful trend information. This is when people were talking about this topic. What happened in that period? So as a historian, all of these are great tools to understand those movements, bigger social movements, where to look for information, and ask questions. Why is that happening there? If you expand the time scale and you find it goes up here, then you're thinking, okay, what is the difference? More newspapers over here? You know, you start to compare trends, and that all just gives you information about your subject. How popular is it? How do people talk about it? See if I have another page.
You've got so many filters.
Yeah, so I was just kind of going through the tools. A lot of what I have to say, oh, here's where you can choose counties. So I've used this. I don't know if I have another page on here. I'm an enthusiastic seller of the product because it is so powerful. And I found that I find it powerful when you know the end of a story, or you know what something is happening currently, and you go back and you're like, huh, this is how this began. In 1840, this is the way they were talking about it. I have an interest in the history of magnetic tape and recording. So I'm really interested in areas where it changes. And changes often have a lot of interesting cultural activity around them because people talk about, is this change good? Is it damaging to us? What's it going to do? Seeing how those things are discussed is interesting to me. It's interesting to go back in time and find that, and I found this many times in the database, where somebody, you know, in 1820 is asking the same question about something that I'm asking today. So to go back to Carolyn's statement about history connecting us, this really is a powerful tool to show that, because I'm constantly finding debates of today in the past. It's powerful also in the way that it shows how cyclical we are. I have an example of, I have numerous, but there are things that have happened that we forget as a country, and it comes back and we re-debate it. So a small example of this, sort of like that. How many of you know the Eadie brothers in Vermont? The story of the Eadie brothers, you know, the spiritualists. So this is an early story that I learned when I moved to Vermont, and I can't explain the whole story. They were famous spiritualists in the mid-19th century. They were from Chittenden, Vermont, excuse me, and when I read about them, they show up in a lot of Vermont folklore books, and the story always ends that they were an unexplained mystery, and Joe Citro loves them. So somehow recently, this is like the last couple of years, something about them came back to my mind, so I'm like, oh, I want to look them up now that I have this. This will be kind of interesting to dive back into the Eddies. So what I learned, because I looked at the Eddies in Vermont, then I knew that they toured outside of Vermont, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to just do the Eddies on an East Coast search. And I began to find the way other states talked about the Eddies. And what I found through all of this was that the Eddies were frauds. And what's powerful in it was that the whole family were frauds. And what people don't like to think is of a family that defrauds people for their business. So this was in the newspaper, and I was like, this is amazing. They were being discovered in each place where they would do a spiritualist show, but they would be out of town that night by the time the paper was reported, and they could perform in another place and not get exposed. So their story is they come back to Vermont. The two brothers are showmen, and they do these shows from their house. But through this database, I found that one of the family, one sister, became disgruntled over money, and she went to the Rutland paper, and she exposed the whole family. She explained how their house was set up. They were tricking people. So she fully exposed them. But in Rutland, a woman had died, and at one of the Edie spiritualist performances, local people who were there said the woman appeared. So they believed fully in the Eddies. But the Eddies had been revealed by their sister, this is all a fraud. Okay, so after they've been exposed, one of the brothers comes to Burlington and does a spiritualist show on Pearl Street. And he's set up. They had people locally who are going to expose him. Because he's already been exposed, but also news travels slowly. So I find the article in the newspaper, the Free Press, how they go to this show and they expose the guy. They turn the lights on and show that this is people hidden, floating trumpets and things like that. So they expose them as frauds, but the people who believed still believed. They doubled down, and they said the people who exposed them were the criminals. So the entire discussion turned into, how do you explain true believers who have something factually shown to them, and they can't see past it? They don't believe you. So this was amazing to me, because I learned through this, the Eddies were frauds, it was exposed, and the whole discussion turned into a cultural discussion of true belief, even though these people had this thing revealed to them. All of that was entirely forgotten, and the Eddies were revived in the 60s in like a Vermont folklore movement, 70s, and they're written about as unexplained mysteries. So this is a powerful tool to learn a lot of information. I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, too?
With newspapers disappearing and the Burlington Free Press talking about restaurants open and closing, 50 years from now, how handy will the last 50 look back be? Where are they going to get their material?
That's a great question, like what's preserving the news and information? Is that the question, like how's that being?
Well, I mean, newspaper.com has been very successful because they've got a lot of newspapers to deal with.
Right, exactly. I don't know. It's a digital record.
And they're dealing with crazy stuff.
Yeah. So
There's no news in Burlington Free Press. Restaurants open and closing.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a great question, and that will reflect something. So I look at this and I see how either what newspapers survive. Vermont has a lot of newspapers in the newspaper database. I didn't think that when I went to do research in the South, I wouldn't find a whole lot. And I had a guy there say, well, we had an army come down and burn all of our newspapers. He told me this. So that's reflected. You know why some records disappear. It's not exactly what you're saying. That's a digital record that you're talking about, and a change in technology and how information's stored. I don't know, in 50 years, it should be a digital record. But you're right, this is based on physical papers that were saved. I was at UVM doing research. I go up and look at the physical papers, and they kept disappearing. Ellen Thompson was there, and she'd say, oh, it's this digitization project. I can't remember the federal funding coming through somebody. And I was so bummed out because my newspapers were going away. And they all came back as this.
And they came from those individual state microfilms.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Newspapers.com folks.
Yeah, yeah.
From-
And one afternoon at home, in maybe 3 hours, I found this amazing story about the house I grew up in Ohio. We didn't know any of it, and it was like this dramatic story. So it's profound to me, really, how it works for some things, it doesn't work for everything. A lot of times I will dive in thinking, I'm going to really learn about something, and I'll discover this person's not in here anywhere, which is shocking. Makes you think how important it is to, or kind of what you need to do to be showing up in the record. I could talk all day. I won't talk all day, but I love this database. It's incredible.
I just wanted to mention.
We'll come up with a way to search digital records like we search newspapers.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that the Visara and the Department of Libraries provides Vermonters with free access to the Vermont newspapers that are in newspapers.com. If you go to the Department of Libraries looking for newspapers.com, there'll be instructions. Basically, you need an account with myvermont.gov, which is like where you renew your driver's license. And right up in the top, when you log into that, it'll say Ancestry and newspapers.com. So that's one way you can experiment with using it without shelling out a subscription.
I have paper instructions too, so if you stop by me, I can give you some paper instructions on how to access it.
Yeah, so we can either break down into individual groups if people have individual questions, or, if people have general research questions, we can also continue with those.
Also, we have some refreshments in case you want to stock up. If you guys want to sort of split apart, and you can ask some specifics, or I would like to thank everybody.
Thank you very
Because
much.
this was really, really interesting. You always learn something new that you didn't know there was a repository of that there. And this is all open to the public. So share the information with your friends. Thank you.